Alrighty, welcome back to another Fireside Chat podcast. Kind of a different episode. First of the business spotlights, and I got my good buddy here, Jeremiah Anderson with Anderson Inspections. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor, dude. We've done some business together, and it's always been a good time, and we've always been able to flow together. So it's nice having friends in the business. So it's nice to have you on the podcast and kind of just give you a little business shout out with Anderson Inspections. So,
yeah, thanks for thinking of me. Appreciate it.
For sure. Well, let's just start off with a little quick little just intro of who you are, kind of what your family is, and kind of stuff like that.
Sure. Well, I'm a lifelong Minnesotan resident, born and raised here. Moved away for a little while, like a lot of people do, to go to school, and came back. My dad was actually a plumber, and kind of growing up thinking you're gonna follow in your parents' footsteps or something, and he's like, no, you don't want to be a plumber. He had a bad back from hurting it on the job, and kind of salty about that. So he kind of pushing me out to go to college and that kind of. So I went that route for a couple of years in liberal arts and learned a lot about communication and writing, and those are good skills that I still have with me to this day. But I came back to Minnesota and actually got a degree in building inspection. So kind of got into this on the academic side, you could say. Some people start inspections as maybe a second career. They're older, been swinging a hammer, and they decide they don't want to do that anymore. But I got into this right away as a young man, and evolved with it over the years. So I started inspecting buildings in 1999.
Wow.
Yeah. We were using Polaroids and handwritten field notes back then. The shake it and run into the 1 hour photo, dropping off film, and then. In 2003, I started this company here, JB Anderson, after I named it after me. And I bought my first digital camera in '03, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be the greatest ever. I don't have to get film anymore. And then it was a 1.3 megapixel camera.
Okay.
The guy was like, this is the best camera out there on the market. And I'm like, yeah, take my money here,
That had to be game-changing, though.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have to. I think it had these cartridges that plugged in, to the side, and they didn't have those little memory cards yet. And each cartridge held like 16 photos. I was like, that's almost a whole roll of film. 24 was like a standard, Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then, like I said, I've evolved with the business over the years. I'm married almost 25 years.
Wow.
My wife and I will celebrate
awesome.
that this year in August. 3 grown kids and 3 grandkids.
Wow. 3 grandkids.
Yeah. And then when I grew up in the area, I joined the fire department while I was going to school doing that. So I just retired from the volunteer fire department here in Blaine, where I grew up. In December of 2021, I had 26 years doing that.
That's awesome.
So fight fires by night and did inspections by day for 26 years. So I'm getting used to now sleeping all night.
Yeah. I bet that was different.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that, but I bet that it kind of goes hand in hand. There's some stuff that comes handy when
Yeah.
Especially with houses that have been in fires, like you can go in there and be like, this structure's not right.
Yeah, I did a lot because I had a background in building inspections. I got involved with fire investigations and fire cause and origin, and did a lot of that stuff. And that's what really drove me to start my company doing inspections, because I would see a lot of fire causes and things. Maybe they had been in place for a number of years, and for whatever factor, it's usually human factor, but the heat, fuel, and oxygen triangle kind of came together, and you had fire.
Yeah.
And I kind of had an aha moment standing in this burned out kitchen one day, and I was like, if we could get in here at a time and point out some of these conditions when people are motivated to make a change, which is usually like when the house is being sold. Because otherwise people are like, it's been like that forever. It's not a problem. That'd be a pretty good service to provide, I felt like, So that's been my driving force and passion for all these years doing inspections, is to help people avoid the stress and aggravation of experiencing a fire or any other kind of a loss with their home. So.
Yeah. I mean, I was just looking at this fourplex in North Minneapolis that had fire damage, like pretty bad, and I was like, how bad really is it? Like, it was pretty cheap. It'd be a pretty good investment property. Like always trying to find ways to make more money. And I'm like, I think it would be a lot of work.
Yeah, everybody says fire damage, and I say fire damage too. But I mean, just for perspective, it's a room and contents fire is our biggest residential problem we have. Like a bedroom fire or a kitchen fire, and it just kind of stays contained to that room. But the smoke travels throughout the whole house, right? And so a room and contents fire might be, $20,000, $30,000 on structure and over $100,000 on contents.
Oh, that's crazy.
Because of the smoke.
Yeah, I had a ex-girlfriend that her house, unfortunately had a fire during 4th of July. Like their garage started on fire from fireworks and stuff like that, and like they just were like, we're gonna have to rebuild the whole house because the smoke was just so bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was mostly in the garage and in the master bedroom kind of, but it went through the whole house and it just reeked. Like, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, garage fires are very dangerous, and any kind of outside fires too, like with fireworks you mentioned. Like, I've seen some of those, and sometimes people, they're throwing away their discarded fireworks in the trash, right? And everybody's got these plastic trash, they still call them cans, but they're plastic, right? They're not metal anymore. And they're usually right up against the side of the house, and that stuff just melts down in the plastic, and it hits the vinyl siding, and that stuff burns tremendously well.
That's exactly what happened.
See?
Like, to a T.
Yeah,
like,
I've been to a lot of those fires.
Yeah, and it's not fun. Like,
no. What happens is it burns right up the siding and then gets into the roof and burns undetected for a long time because the smoke detectors are not up in the roof, right? They're in the house. And usually it's a neighbor or somebody driving by that sees it. The people are in the house and don't even know it.
Yeah, it's a scary moment. Like, we had a chimney fire once at my house, and like I was so young that my parents were like, oh, we're just going to go to the neighbors and hang out. And I was like, oh, sweet. Like 8 p.m. we get to go to the neighbor's house. This is awesome. And then fire trucks come. I'm like, what's going on?
Right.
Like, all they did was like just shot like a fire extinguisher up the chimney, and it was
when I first joined the fire department, we used to go on quite a few chimney fires every winter. The reality now is most of those kind of burned themselves out that had issues because of the way they constructed them. And so we didn't see too many chimney fires anymore, unless it was because there's kind of two reasons. Like, one of them is the buildup of the creosote inside if you're not cleaning them regularly. And the other way is when they built houses in 40s, 50s, all the way up to the mid 70s, they didn't necessarily have the clearance of the wood far enough away from the firebox. And there's a process, and I'm going to throw a technical word out there, but it's called pyrolysis. And it's essentially what they do to make charcoal. Charcoal starts out as wood, and it goes out through a drying process to lower the ignition temperature. And then you can just light it really easily, and then it burns, right? So the same thing can happen with the wood in your house if it's exposed repeatedly to high heat over a number of years. It kind of goes through a chemical change, and it lowers the ignition temperature a little bit every time and dries it out more and more until that one day when you have that fire that you always have and there was never an issue, and now all of a sudden it starts on fire. So
that's crazy to think about. I mean, like, at my house now, we have a mantle like right above our fireplace. And
there's codes and stuff on how far those have to be away from because of that reason. I started offering chimney scope services a few years ago now. A lot of home inspectors don't do it. They just say, well, I'm just here to look at the home, not the chimney. And I just felt that was a disservice. It's pretty expensive to get that equipment and go through extra training. I had a lot of it already up front from my background, like I mentioned. But we have a camera we can put on a pole, and then it spins around in a 360-degree circle, so we can look at kind of like a barber pole effect, going up the chimney and then all the way down. And looking for any cracks, because that's the other thing with chimney fires. Even if you're cleaning it regularly, which you should be doing it at least once every season if you're using that chimney regularly. With masonry chimneys, they're blocks stacked on top of each other, and the flue, you might have heard that term, the flue. And they have like a little joint of cement that holds these blocks together. It's about an inch. And over years of use, heating and cooling, expansion, contraction, those little 1-inch joints, the masonry cement falls out of those, and then you end up with holes. And it's sort of like trying to drink through a straw that has a hole in it. If you've ever tried to do that, it doesn't work so good. Same thing if you're trying to have a fire in a chimney that has you add up all those holes, and it doesn't draft properly, and then you end up with uneven heating, and it can heat areas that aren't normally heated that high and end up with a chimney fire. So using that chimney camera system, we'll find those.
Wow. So that's really nice. Like you said, but that equipment's not cheap.
It's several $1,000s, up front, and then maintenance ongoing and stuff. So, But yeah, just to add a chimney scope onto an inspection, we charge per fireplace to do it.
Yeah.
So it's I think we're at 180 bucks to throw it on to an existing inspection.
Yeah, that's not too
And
bad.
usually, if we find a repair issue, it's well over $1,000.
Yeah,
to
so
fix
it's worth it, right? Right?
Yeah, definitely not to avoid a chimney fire.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times to repair them, they run a stainless steel liner through there, and inflation's prices are always changing. But
Always, yeah.
we're getting estimates anywhere between $100 to $125 a foot to run a steel liner, and most chimneys are between 16 and 20 feet. So.
Yeah. Wow. Are you seeing a lot of like actual wood burning fireplaces in houses, or?
Yeah, the trend has kind of fallen out of favor over the last 20 years because of energy codes in Minnesota primarily. But on houses that were built prior to 1980s, they're pretty, they're more common, all the way to the mid 80s, probably 85-ish.
Wow.
But yeah, just depends on the type of house it is and the area. But, the fireplaces, wood burning, they pull a lot of air out of the house, and we're trying to keep that air in the house to heat our home. So it doesn't work so well with the energy requirements that we have here in our state. So.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of those, like, the new builds, like everyone's just putting those like electric fireplaces that just go right into the wall. Like, have you seen those? Like, those are really cool. Like, I
do like that, that, and then the gas ones too. I mean, you just push a button and you got fire, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, then a lot of those electric ones, you can change the colors and different things,
I was just at a builder meeting yesterday, and like we're looking at it, and I was like, you can get like blue flames and purple flames. I'm like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, just push a button. Yeah, I've seen a few of those. I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, they are.
I like gadgets and stuff. But some people, they just really like the ambiance and the smell of burning wood.
You get the crackle and the pop. Like,
I'm sure you have buyers that's on their list, right? They want a wood burning fireplace as one of their wants.
Yeah. I mean, my parents, like, one of the reasons we bought our house was because it was a wood burning fireplace. Because it's like, we've always had that, and it's cool. It sounds nice. Like Christmas time, you can't beat it. Like, I was leaving my house this morning. The snow was coming down through the windows. I'm like, this would be pretty nice to have a fire right now and just like hang out.
Yeah, the house I grew up in, we had a wood burning too.
It's nice.
Yeah. My dad used to always have me like help start the fire when I was younger. And I thought, oh, it's pretty cool, And then got to that certain age when you're like, wait a second. He's having me do all the hard work here, cutting all the kindling up and stuff.
Yeah, we have in-floor heating in our basement, and then like that just went out like a week ago with the thermostat. Like the electricity is kind of like messed up, so we're trying to fix that. So we've been having a lot of wood fires. My parents like, we're gonna run out of wood, and I'm like, uh-oh. And they're like, yep, you're gonna be the one going to get more wood. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's funny they brought that up because I do run into that on inspections from time to time with those in-floor heating systems. There's a lot of rubber bands to break, my dad would call it, right? They're not like super expensive, but there's just a lot of little parts and pieces, like low voltage stuff, controls and pumps, and depending on how big it is, how many zones you have, and they all have to kind of work together. Otherwise, it just kind of shuts down.
It does, yeah. It's awesome though.
Yeah,
like
when it works.
When they work, it's great. Like
Yeah,
but when
for
they
sure.
don't, no. Like we lived in a slab-on-grade Rambler a couple of years ago, and that was all in-floor heating, but it was all like electric in-floor heating.
Okay.
And our electric bill was outrageous. We're like, this was done very poorly. Like
yeah, electric heat is pretty expensive in Minnesota. Maybe down south, like I don't know, Missouri-ish and south when you're not running it as much, but not up here in January especially.
Yeah, no, it was. We moved for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right if you got like one room, right? A bathroom or something.
The master bathroom or something like that, where we've seen a lot of like new builds. The in-floor heating, which is awesome.
Right, but the whole house, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was.
Adds up. One of the other things I wanted to mention too about the kind of tie-in with fires and inspections is the recall check that we always include, right? When I first started doing this, we were writing it down by hand and like faxing it in to our office. Now I've got this app on my phone, and myself or any of the other inspectors we can take a picture of the model number and serial number on the appliances, and then we check them for safety recalls. Because a lot of people don't know, just like your automobile, if there's ever been a recall on your car, you probably know it's a repair, and you bring it in and it's free. There's another government agency for cars. It's National Highway Transportation Safety Board, and everybody registers their car, so they find out about these recalls. But with homes, the Consumer Product Safety Commission is involved on home appliance repairs as well as children's toys and clothing. And so if there's ever been there's been a ton of recalls on microwaves and dishwashers over the last decade.
Yeah.
And we'll find those on inspections by checking with the model number and serial number, and we can provide an emailed report to the buyer. And there's a 1-800 number they just call, and it's either a free repair, or in some cases, the other option is they give them a credit towards purchase of a new appliance. If, like, let's say it's a 10-year-old dishwasher, maybe they're thinking about changing it out anyway. So they get anywhere between $200 to $400 depending on the dishwasher they buy. So
that's awesome. Like,
yeah,
that's huge for clients.
Yeah, and it's a win-win because they're getting it fixed for free or getting it replaced for free.
Yeah.
And most of the recalls are for fire-related issues like overheated wiring or something that like there's a recall on dishwashers. There's a couple different brands. I think Bosch was one of them. Frigidaire is another one. But wiring coming in would overheat on the cord, and then also the heating element in the bottom of the tub was overheating, and just like melt down everything inside of there. And,
that's not good.
No, yeah, again, not much fire, but all that smoke damage, right?
Yeah, not good.
So we do the recall check on all of our inspections, and I've been doing that for years and years just because it provides huge value to people, I believe. So.
Yeah, no, it really does, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been in the business for quite some time now, I mean, since 99. So, I'm sure you've seen some crazy stuff and seen some crazy things happen. Like, what's some of the top stories you got for us?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Lately, with social media and stuff, I've been doing some reels, videos and stuff.
I've seen a couple of them.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, and I try not to place blame or act like Mr. Expert, like this is bad, and because some people do that. I just try to have fun.
Yeah, that's what social media is
about,
right?
And it's kind of a stress relief for me because I could just take it from here and get it out of my head, put it out there for the universe to laugh at. So, I mean, I was on one not too long ago. We also do sewer scopes for people. We started doing those a while back too, just because it's a major part of your house, the main sewer line, and if anything happens to it, it's literally you got what backing up into your house. They hired me to do a sewer scope in this house built in 1929.
Okay.
Which is what I would recommend doing them on the older homes.
Yep.
And so I go in, you got to remove this cap to access it. And usually there's a cap in the floor or a floor drain or somewhere to get it. Well, I'm in the basement of this unfinished basement in this 1929 house. And I look down, and there's just this round little hole in the floor, where there used to be a cap, but it was broken. And that happens sometimes. You can take them off, they break, but you got to fix it, right? Because you don't want sewer gas coming in.
Yeah.
But it was only this deep, and I could see water in it. And normally they go down quite a ways.
Okay.
But it was really shallow. So I was they had a toilet downstairs. So I was I wonder. So I'm doing this reel now, hey, what's going on? I don't usually say anything. I just give these facial expressions. So I'm like, okay. And I walk over and flush the toilet and come over, and then took about 5 seconds, and then all of a sudden you see water going across there. I'm like,
that's not good.
No, it's not. And then, I actually did the sewer scope too, and we found quite a few tree root intrusions coming through because those older systems, they have couplers, and the tree roots come in looking for moisture about every 6 feet-ish or so. And then another one, they had put in the seller's disclosure, there was a funny smell when they turned on the gas fireplace. And they didn't know why. They just, it works, but it smells weird. So I'm looking at it, and I kind of look up in this, there's this little gap on the top. Sometimes they took off the screen.
Yeah. And
there's something blue up there, and I reach up there, and I get up my phone, and I try to do this unscripted with the, I'm just like, what is this? And I pull it out. Well, it's like a little kid donut. Like a plastic donut. A little toddler had shoved it up in there, and it was probably an inch tall at one point, but it had melted down to just a piece of barely thicker than paper on the top of this fireplace. So then every time they turned it on, it would kind of heat, and they'd smell the burning plastic. So
why wouldn't they think of anything. They're just like, oh, it works. But
again, you know, it's like I mentioned at the beginning when we start talking, it's just like, it's been that way for a long time. Doesn't seem to cause any problem. You know, they're not motivated to do anything. It's just daily life, man.
Yeah.
You just flip the switch. They got fire. It smells a little different, whatever. You know?
Yeah.
You know, but the craziest stuff was maybe a decade or more ago, back when we were seeing a lot of vacant homes.
Yeah.
You know, and like now, when I still do it now, like when I get to a house, whether it's just part of my process now, like get to the house, knock on the door, and I walk through every single room right away just to kind of check things.
No one's there.
Right. Because I mean, legit, like I was doing this one time, you know, 10, 12 years ago, I can't remember exactly, up in Ramsey. And, you know, it's a vacant house, kind of they all were back then almost. And, you know, I just kind of went in the kitchen and started doing my thing. No one was there. It was just me. And then like a half hour into it, all of a sudden I hear footsteps coming up from the basement. And it's this guy like, hey, man, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what are you doing here? You know, he kind of had that moment. Like, you know, he's like, and it happened there's like the second or third time, but this one was kind of comical because he was sort of asleep. It was like a 9 a.m. appointment, you know. And they always have this story like, oh, I'm here to watch the house for the seller. I'm like, whatever, man. I'm just here to do an inspection.
Yeah,
you know?
like I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
Like,
so then that's what I would do. I'd just kind of walk around, and then if I'd seen someone, I'd be like, hey, just letting you know, I'm here doing the inspection. And then they tell me their story. I'm like, fine, whatever. But there's going to be more people coming probably, so you might want to kind of collect yourself and get out. And they usually did. So
that's funny.
Yeah, so we had a few of those back in the days of all those vacant foreclosed homes, and a lot of them had, you know, copper pipe was cut out, and you couldn't inspect the plumbing or anything because the water was off, or utilities were shut off. So it was a little challenging times back then.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about, like, everyone that around my age, they're like, do you ever run into problems with like termites? And I'm like, it's too cold. Like, have you ever ran into like termites up here? Like,
yeah, so that's one of the benefits of living where the face hurts your air, or the air hurts your face. I mean, right? We just don't have a termite problem up here in Minnesota. I mean, I've heard you get down like on the border of Iowa, and you start to see them a little bit. It's just we don't have the subterranean termites here because the frost level in the metro area all the way up till you get to Duluth, and then it goes deeper, they say, is 42 inches. When you're digging footings and stuff, you got to go down at least 42 inches deep. And termites aren't going that deep.
No.
You know, so. But we do have carpenter ants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a few other wood-destroying insects, so it's not totally immune.
Out of the question.
You know, but yeah. Because, you might get an out-of-state buyer coming here, and they ask for a termite inspection, right?
And you're like,
wait, what?
I had one client ask for a radon inspection or radon test on a condo on the 5th level.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you understand like how the radon works and stuff? And he goes, I still want it. Yeah,
I've had those requests over the years too, and I've done them because people insist.
Yeah.
And when I started asking those questions, I usually try to have conversation, and many times I found they were relocating, and they had sort of a relocation package on what they could spend, and that was one of the line items. Okay. And they're like, well, we have this money to spend, we're going to spend it. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Yeah. But pretty low risk on the 5th floor, right?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's maybe the 1st floor.
Yeah, for people that don't know like how radon like gets into a house, it's gases released from the ground that comes up through the basement or through the cracks in concrete or whatever.
Yeah, it's a gas under pressure. So I mean, depending on where you live is a bigger risk factor, and Minnesota, most of the states, a high risk. And I mean, we tested the lowest lived-in level when we do a measurement for it. So anything above the 1st floor and up, it really decreases quite a bit.
Yeah. Have you done a lot of radon testing or?
Yeah. I've been testing for radon as a company for probably 15 years. I started doing it. Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah,
I bet it comes up a fair amount.
Yeah. I mean, really, what changed the game here in Minnesota? I'll be upfront for your viewers and listeners. They added that radon disclosure law here on the books. I want to say, I might be off on the year, but it was like 2013, 2012 or something. Yeah. So if there's ever been a radon test on a property in the past, I believe it's 2 years, the seller has to disclose it.
Okay.
Yeah, once that law got passed and people were seeing like this radon disclosure, they were like, oh, well,
what's that?
Yeah. Those conversations started coming up. And if it was checked no, then people were like, well, maybe we should test for it then. Yeah. So I mean, the law was for disclosure, but it really triggered a lot more people to be thinking about it and awareness. So the amount of people requesting it has increased exponentially since then.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have some clients that are really serious about it. They really want to test it and want to make sure that everything's all good to go. But
yeah, and I won't get on tangent on it because you can get really deep in the weeds on it. But just 4.0 is the magic number, right? And in Minnesota, the highest I've ever found was a 34 point something.
Wow.
Okay, and that's a lot.
That is.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you get out like to the eastern seaboard or the like Colorado-ish rocky areas, they'll have houses well over 100 pico, especially in pico curies.
Yeah.
Well over 100 in those areas.
Wow.
So those, up until that law got passed for disclosure, those were the people that were moving here from those parts of the country where they were seeing radon in those concentrations, and they were like, yeah, we want to test for it.
And it's like, we have 1.2.
Yeah.
And they're like, what?
Yeah, but it was on their mind, though, because it was such a big deal where they lived.
Yeah.
And then they were like, we got to test for it. Just kind of like the termites was on their mind for people that had that. They'd be moving here, relocating, and yeah. So it is an issue in Minnesota, but we don't see those super sky high numbers generally. But still, 34 is something you want to have corrected, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the radon mitigation system is, I mean, how much is that? It's what, in your opinion, I guess, how much is a radon mitigation system?
I don't do those installs, but I talk to the companies that do, and they're in the same situation with inflation that we all are right now, so their costs have gone up. It used to be around $1,200 to $1,500 to get a single fan system installed, which is what most of them have to be in Minnesota. It's probably closer to about $2,000 now with inflation, and PVC pipes gone up and all this and that. So still, I mean, you're talking less than 1% of the house price to do that.
It's worth it, especially when you're at 34.
Yeah, and most people, when I talk to them, they say, "Oh, I figured it would have been like 10,000." They're like, "Oh, 2,000, that's totally doable."
Yeah, it's not like a whole new septic system or something.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah, that's a big expense there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily, in my opinion, a reason you shouldn't buy a house if there's high radon, because you can fix it and deal with it. You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, kind of back that you've been in the business for so long. Give me a little estimate on how many homes you think you've inspected.
Yeah. So we started tracking our inspections quite closely with a scheduling system about a decade ago. Okay. And prior to using that system, it wasn't quite as accurate. It was more kind of like writing it on the whiteboard and ledgering. So I'm real confident right now with the numbers that we have. It's right around 12,000. Wow. Yeah.
How many houses have you inspected more than once?
Yeah.
Has that happened?
Yeah, it has, and sometimes it's awkward, especially if it's kind of close.
Yeah.
You feel like, I was here 6 months ago. Yeah. That came up more so when the market was a little different, when houses weren't selling, and they'd be on the market, and then they'd have an inspection, and maybe they didn't buy it and looked at a different one.
Yeah.
I think I can count on one hand the amount of times I've done inspections on the same house. Yeah. The more common scenario I've ran into is where, let's say you sell a house and they live in it for 5 years and life changes and they decide to move. So then you represent the buyers coming in on the new end and then both sides of it. And so you and I work together, and so you're like, I'm going to refer Jeremiah to you. So you're new buyers for that house. I end up seeing that house again. Yeah. Which I think that's totally normal, and things can change in 5 years, right?
Right. It can, for sure. A lot can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's inevitable. Yeah. But if it's been 5 months, it's a little different.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, because people are like, well, why are we paying you again?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll do a walkthrough and kind of review the report, because technically the report from 5 months ago belongs to the person who paid for that, but we'll call them up, ask them if it's okay, and most people are like, that's fine.
Yeah. Another question I had was, the codes and the laws have changed so much all the time. How do you keep up with everything that's changing?
It's a whole different world in the code world. I spent a little bit of time there. I was fire marshal for a few years. Okay. So I got involved in the code review process, and so on a national level, about the time I got into doing inspections, they changed to, they had this great idea, and I think it was a great idea. I said that mockingly, but we want to have the same code everywhere in the in the United States. So they
Yeah.
changed, they call it the International Building Code and the International Residential Code. Prior to that, like different parts of the country sort of had their own codes. Like in the Midwest, we used to have what's called ICBO code, International Conference of Building Officials. And then when you got kind of down south, they had the Southern Building Codes Congress International. And then you went out west, they had something different. And then out east, they were more into the NFPA kind of standards for fire protection code.
Yeah.
And it got crazy because you started having national builders that want to build houses all over, and they just want to have one code,
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of involved, going through school when we were changing over to the international codes, and I've stayed pretty close with it. It's still up to each individual state to make their own local amendments, is where it gets kind of tricky, because even in the state of Minnesota, we're working off of those international codes, but the state has the authority to make amendments to the code to add things like our own energy code, for example, that we have here in Minnesota that's unique. So yeah, every 3 to 5 years, there's some changes that happen to those codes. So when a house is built, technically in 3 to 5 years, it's out of code.
Yeah.
Because people ask you, does it meet code? Well, you got to look at what was in effect when it was built.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets to be like you got to have this knowledge base. You got to be able to know what was required 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And it gets to be a lot. So I have a lot of code books on my shelf.
Yeah,
in
no,
my
I believe
office.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to our builder and our properties, Eric, and he was talking about how, like, in islands, they're not going to allow, like, outlets on the sides. Like, they're going to have to, like, come up, or just no outlets in the islands anymore. And it's like, why? And it's like, well, kids are pulling, like, toasters off the islands and having them hit them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you guys keep up with this? It's like,
Yeah.
every day I talk with a builder, and they're like, yeah, there's this new code. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of things that are in codes are there because of some type of event that happened, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
or a fire of some sort. And then just local opinion too, and needs of the area. Like we don't have hurricanes and high winds here, so we don't have all those kind of hurricane things. And like you go to other parts of the country, they have to have special straps on the water heater tank called seismic straps to prevent the water heater from tipping over if there's an earthquake.
okay.
We don't have that here, right?
Yeah, don't have
So,
that here.
Yeah, so different things, some of it is regional, and
Yeah.
then some of it is political based on the area you live.
Right?
Like a lot of stuff, you go across the border in Wisconsin, and there's not as many local code updates over there. So,
Yeah.
you'll talk to builders, and it's a little cheaper for them to build a house in Wisconsin
Yeah.
than Minnesota.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Codes are crazy. The laws are crazy. It's
Yeah.
always crazy. Do you do a lot of inspections on, like, new construction homes?
I've been asked over the years, and to answer that, would be no, I don't do a lot.
Yeah.
I think the reason is because we have a pretty robust code in Minnesota, and if you're in the metro, there's a pretty good inspection department usually following up on different phases of those inspections. Framing, framing, insulation, those kind of phase inspections. But I have done them for people, and usually it was because it was more of custom design,
Yeah.
and they weren't comfortable with the local code official kind of following up on some of the things. Because if someone tells you they're building a house to code, it's kind of the lowest minimum standard
Yeah. Right?
legally. And some people, when they build a house, it's more like up here. So that's that gap where I would kind of come in
Yeah,
to
and
kind of help with that.
Yeah.
Because this part here is usually covered okay, but up here is where they want it, so that's where I would help.
Yeah. That's awesome, though. I mean, you do a lot. You're probably always staying busy, and like you said, you have time to actually sleep at night. Now that
Right.
you're not a
Yeah.
firefighter volunteer,
Yeah.
so that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, literally, legit, maybe 4 hours of sleep I was getting
Yeah, that's
for
crazy.
a decade or more.
Oh,
Yeah.
but I bet you got some crazy stories from that side of things
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
oh, wow. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. It's
Yeah.
been a pleasure. Like I always love hanging out with you and getting to learn from you, because
Sure.
you got a lot of knowledge. Just being in the industry and the business for so long, so it's been
For sure.
very nice. Do you have any last things you kind of want to say, or?
Yeah, I mean, just for people buying a house, everybody says it's your biggest investment, which it is, and you want to have, everything checked. Just who you work with matters,
It does.
and your team is out there, and you bring huge value to people, and I think that's why it was such a natural fit, when we started talking, and then I've known Tyler for a long time too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're just not there to be just the basic inspection. You know, we'll go above and beyond for our customers by doing extra stuff if they want us to, or if they just want the basic, that's totally fine too.
Yeah.
We're just there to provide whatever level of inspection service they want. If it's a basic inspection, if they want mold testing, we do mold testing, radon measurement, sewer scope, chimney scope. We include the recall check with all of them because it's a huge, property and life safety thing. So, yeah, so they can just give us a call and be happy to help them out with any of their inspection needs.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is great. I know I've done some business with you, and it's always been a pleasure. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to doing some more here, hopefully soon. Hopefully we get some of the buyers off the fence here and find some properties that they want. Like you said, inventory's low, but
yeah,
we're seeing, I want to say, I just checked the numbers today. We had 1,000 new listings in the last week. So it's like...
That's what's great about this business, right? It's always this wild ride. You never know what's coming, but
you don't.
You're in it for the long haul, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. But where can people find you?
Sure. A lot of people nowadays are on the internet website. So our website's the jbandersoninspections.com. And then they can schedule online right there.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll put that link in the description. So.
And if they're old school and they want to call on the phone, there's 763-350-8509 is the number, and
perfect.
Texting too. For that generation that wants to text, we try to make it easy for everybody.
Yeah, that's how it is though. Every generation's different, and you got to try to fit in everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and everyone watching, thanks for sticking around, and we'll be back soon. See you later.
Thanks.